I never imagined I would share this story publicly. For years, I kept it hidden, not out of shame, but out of fear. Fear of rejection, of misunderstanding, of loss. My name is Fatima, and what you're about to hear isn't fiction or exaggeration. It's my personal journey, my testimony. A journey that began within the boundaries of deep religious tradition and ended with an encounter that changed everything. I know what it's like to be torn between what you've been taught and what your soul quietly cries out for. This is for anyone who has ever wondered if there is more. There is, and this is how I found it. I grew up in a household governed by unshakable faith. Not just belief, but ritual, law, and culture woven into every part of life. From my earliest memories, the framework of my identity was built on discipline and obedience. Our days began with prayer, continued with duty, and ended with scripture. Questioning was not welcomed. It was seen as weakness, or worse, rebellion. I memorized prayers before I understood their meanings. I wore garments that covered not just my body, but also, eventually, my questions. In our world, honor came from obedience, and obedience meant silence. From the outside, our family looked perfect, structured, devout, respectful. But on the inside, my heart felt like a prisoner behind the bars of rules I didn't choose. It wasn't that I disliked our faith. It was that I couldn't feel it. Not truly. I went through the motions, like everyone else, but nothing ever reached the depths of my soul. I remember watching others pray with passion, eyes closed, tears streaming, while I sat quietly, wondering what I was missing. I often asked myself if something was broken inside me. Why couldn't I feel what they felt? As I got older, my silence turned into performance. I knew what to say, how to behave, what expressions pleased my family and community. I played the part so well that even I began to believe the act. But at night, when I was alone, the mask would fall. My thoughts became louder. Is this really all there is? Is this how connection to God is supposed to feel? I feared the questions I asked myself. I feared what they might lead to. But the fear didn't stop the questions. They multiplied quietly. I buried those questions for years. I kept myself busy with studies, responsibilities, and service. I convinced myself that faith was not a feeling. It was an obligation. Love for God was not something you experienced. It was something you earned. I tried to pray harder, fast longer, serve more. I thought maybe if I just did everything right, the emptiness would go away. But the more I tried to perform, the more hollow I felt. And that emptiness wasn't just spiritual. It felt personal, like a part of my soul was missing. There were moments, small, almost imperceptible moments, when I felt something stir, a soft whisper in my chest, a longing I couldn't explain. I would dismiss it quickly, telling myself I was being ungrateful. That doubt was dangerous, but it returned over and over, sometimes while walking alone, sometimes during prayer, sometimes in the quiet before sleep. It wasn't loud, but it was persistent. A simple, haunting question. What if there's more? Still, I pushed it down. I feared the consequences of exploring those thoughts. My family, my reputation, my identity, all of it was tied to the faith I was born into. I didn't want to betray anyone. I didn't want to abandon my roots. So I stayed the course, convincing myself that obedience would eventually lead to revelation. That if I just kept trying, God would meet me where I was. But he didn't. Or at least, not in the way I expected. Then one day something changed. A video. Just a random video on the internet. I wasn't looking for it. It showed up in a way I can only describe as divine interruption. I almost scrolled past it, but a name caught my attention. Jesus. A name I was told to respect as a prophet but never to consider beyond that. Still, something made me click. And in that moment, a door cracked open. I didn't know then that everything was about to change. I watched the video in secret, with the volume low and the lights dimmed. My heart pounded as if I were doing something wrong, even though I was only listening. The speaker talked about Jesus, not as a prophet, but as someone who knew them intimately, who loved them without condition. It felt strange, foreign, yet familiar. I couldn't explain the emotions that rose within me. Curiosity, fear, warmth, confusion. I should have turned it off, and part of me wanted to, but something stronger told me to stay. So I watched until the end, and when it finished, I sat there in silence, tears on my face, not fully understanding why. That night I couldn't sleep. My thoughts were loud, tumbling over each other. What if everything I knew wasn't the full truth? What if God was trying to show me something new? I opened my laptop again, hesitantly, and searched for more videos. I watched testimonies of people who had left Islam, not out of hatred, but out of a hunger they couldn't ignore. They didn't look angry. They looked free. They spoke about peace, about being seen, about a love that had no conditions. I didn't know what to make of it, but I couldn't stop watching. I was being drawn in. I began living a double life. By day, I was the obedient daughter, reciting prayers, following tradition, smiling when expected. By night, I became a seeker, reading about Jesus, downloading hidden Bible apps, listening to testimonies with my headphones on in bed. I feared being caught. I cleared my browser history every morning. I deleted every search. But the more I tried to hide it, the more I longed for it. I wasn't just curious anymore. I was desperate. Something inside me was waking up, and I couldn't push it back down this time. One night, I whispered a prayer, not a formal one, not in Arabic, not rehearsed, just words from my heart. I said, "Jesus, if you're real, show me." I didn't know what to expect. I was trembling, but in that silence, something washed over me. Peace. Gentle, still, unmistakable peace. Not fear, not fire, not judgment, just peace. I wept silently, clutching my pillow because I had never experienced anything like it before, not in all my years of religious devotion. That moment, however small, was the beginning of something I couldn't explain away. The more I prayed in secret, the more Jesus felt real. I spoke to him like a friend. I didn't know doctrine. I didn't understand theology, but I felt heard. I felt known, and I started to read the Bible piece by piece. Every word felt alive. I read about a man who loved the broken, who touched the outcast, who forgave the sinner, who welcomed the doubter. And in every story, I saw myself. I wasn't reading ancient history. I was reading a reflection of my own soul. I felt like someone had been waiting for me on every page. The guilt was unbearable at times. I still lived under my parents' roof. I still participated in every family ritual. And yet, I was hiding a secret that could destroy everything. If they found out, I didn't know what they would do. But I couldn't stop. Not because I wanted to betray them, but because I had finally tasted something real. My whole life I had tried to earn God's favor. Now, for the first time, I felt like it had been given to me, freely, without cost. And that was the most terrifying and beautiful part of all. One morning, my brother walked into my room without knocking. My phone was open. A video paused. The name, Jesus, clear on the screen. Time stopped. He stared. I froze. Neither of us spoke. He turned and left. My hands were shaking. I didn't know what he would do. Within hours, the entire house changed. My phone was taken. My door locked from the outside. I wasn't allowed to leave. My parents didn't speak to me. I became a prisoner in my own home, surrounded by familiar walls that no longer felt safe. And yet, in that darkness, I began to hear Jesus more clearly than ever before. They tried to scare the truth out of me. They told me I was cursed, that I had been brainwashed, that I had brought shame on the family. My father didn't look at me. My mother cried every time she passed my room. They brought an imam to speak with me, to bring me back. I sat there silently, letting him speak, pretending to listen. But my mind was elsewhere. I wasn't trying to rebel. I was trying to survive. But more than that, I was trying to remain faithful to the truth that had finally lit a flame in my heart, a flame that no threat could extinguish. My siblings refused to eat with me. They said I had defiled our home. I was stripped of everything: privacy, freedom, dignity. But I still had one thing they couldn't take: my faith. In the stillness of the night, I would whisper his name under my breath. Jesus, be with me. And he was. There were no visions, no lightning, just peace that passed understanding. I began to understand what the Bible meant when it said he is near to the brokenhearted, because in those nights of captivity, I felt his nearness more than ever. One evening, I was awakened suddenly. Two men, relatives, entered my room, grabbed me, and dragged me outside. I screamed. My voice cracked. My heart raced. I didn't know where they were taking me. My mother followed behind them, sobbing but silent. I was shoved into a vehicle, blindfolded, hands bound. I was terrified, begging them to stop. No one responded. The silence was heavier than the violence, and in that moment, I knew they were going to do something irreversible. I began to pray, not for escape, but for strength. I knew Jesus heard me. They said they were going to purify me, that I had invited a demon, that I needed deliverance. What they meant was punishment. They doused me in cold water, shouted incantations I didn't recognize, and struck me when I resisted. I went limp. My body felt like it didn't belong to me. I kept repeating his name in my mind. Jesus, Jesus, Jesus. Not as a plea for rescue, but as an anchor. My spirit clung to him like a child clings to a lifeline in a storm. And in the middle of the chaos, I felt something strange. A warmth, a light, within. The abuse didn't end that night. It continued, silently, secretly, over days. I bore it all. I bore it for the one who bore the cross. My body broke, but my faith remained, and eventually they gave up. I was returned to my room, weak, bruised, but alive. They thought I had surrendered. I hadn't. I had survived, and survival in that moment felt like a victory. I remember lying on the floor, bloodied but smiling through the tears, because I knew what they didn't. I wasn't alone. I never had been. Not long after I escaped. I won't share the details because some stories are still dangerous, but I found shelter, a safe place. A woman took me in, no questions asked. She gave me food, a bed, and most importantly, freedom. For the first time, I could pray aloud. I could read my Bible in the open. I could sleep without fear. I wept often, not from sorrow but from overwhelming gratitude. Jesus had rescued me, not just spiritually, but physically. He had walked into my fire and pulled me out. And that's when I knew I could never go back. Not to the lies, not to the fear, not to the prison of performance. I had encountered the living God, and he had changed everything. I didn't understand everything yet. I didn't have all the answers, but I knew this. I was loved. I was chosen. I was free. And that was more than enough to begin again. The pain hadn't disappeared. The trauma remained. But so did hope. So did faith. So did Jesus. And with him, I would walk forward, no matter what it cost me. In the months that followed, I began to heal. Not just physically, but spiritually. The nights were still long. The flashbacks would come like waves. But in every wave, I felt his hand. I found myself waking up whispering his name. Not out of fear, but out of closeness. I wasn't trying to conjure his presence. I was living in it. Every scar on my body became a silent reminder of survival, and every prayer became a song of gratitude. I wasn't the same girl anymore. Something in me had shifted forever. I wasn't lost. I had been found. I joined a small community of believers, people like me, from similar backgrounds, who had risked everything for the truth. I listened to their stories, and for the first time in my life, I felt like I belonged. Not because we looked the same or practiced the same rituals, but because we had all encountered the same Savior. We weren't united by culture. We were united by grace. And that grace gave us boldness, even in the face of fear. I started sharing bits of my story, quietly at first, then more confidently as healing came. I remember the first time I shared publicly. My voice trembled, my hands shook, but I spoke the truth. Not just about the pain, but about the peace. Not just about the fire, but about the one who stood with me in it. People wept, not out of pity, but out of recognition. They saw themselves in my words, and they came forward, one by one, asking if the same Jesus could rescue them too. That's when I realized this story wasn't just mine to carry. It was meant to be shared. It was meant to break chains. Everywhere I went, people had questions. How did you find the courage? What if your family never forgives you? Do you ever wish you hadn't left? My answer was always the same. I didn't leave something. I found someone. Courage didn't come from me. It came from him. Forgiveness wasn't in my control. But freedom? That had already been won. And no, I don't regret it. Not for 1 second. Because knowing Jesus wasn't the end of my story. It was the beginning of real life. The hardest part is still the silence. My family cut all contact. I haven't heard my mother's voice in over a year. I miss her every day, but I trust that one day, the same grace that found me will find them too. I pray for them constantly, not out of guilt, but out of love. Because even though they abandoned me, I have not abandoned hope. The Jesus who saved me from death can reach anyone, even the ones who lit the match, even the ones who watched me burn. I believe that with all my heart. There are still days I struggle. The world can be loud, doubts can creep in, pain resurfaces. But every time it does, I go back to the moment I first whispered his name. I go back to the light in that darkness, the whisper that calmed the fire. And I remember that he never promised ease. He promised presence. He never promised perfection. He promised peace. And I have never once walked alone since the day I said, "Jesus, if you're real, show me." He did. And he keeps showing me still. That's why I speak today. Not to convince, not to condemn, but to invite. If you are questioning, doubting, aching, please hear me. You're not alone. You're not weak. You're not broken beyond repair. You're searching, and that search is holy. Don't run from it. Don't silence it. Lean in. Because Jesus isn't threatened by your questions. He welcomes them. He welcomed mine. And when I thought I had nothing left to give, he gave me everything. He gave me himself. And that changed everything. There's a kind of love that doesn't ask for perfection. It doesn't demand performance. It simply offers presence. That's what I found in Jesus. I spent my whole life trying to earn favor, approval, love. With him, I discovered I already had it. Not because I was good, but because he is. Not because I performed, but because he pursued. He saw me in my silence, in my fear, in my pain, and he called me by name. That's the kind of love I had never known. That's the kind of love I can't stop speaking about. I've met others like me, some just beginning to ask, others too afraid to admit it. To them I say, your questions don't disqualify you. Your doubts don't disgrace you. They are often the first step toward truth. Don't let fear stop you from seeking. Don't let religion keep you from relationship. There is a God who isn't waiting for your perfection. He's waiting for your honesty. He's waiting for your surrender. And when you give it, he doesn't respond with shame. He responds with arms wide open. I've learned that freedom is costly. You may lose friends. You may lose family. You may lose everything that once defined you, but what you gain is worth more than anything you'll ever leave behind. I lost my home, my culture, my safety, but I gained peace, truth, and identity. And I would choose it all over again. Not because the pain was small, but because the promise was greater. Knowing Jesus didn't erase my wounds, it gave them purpose. It turned ashes into beauty, scars into signs of grace. There are moments when I still feel the sting of rejection, the loneliness of exile. But in those moments I feel something stronger, his presence. I've walked through fire, and I didn't walk alone. That truth stays with me, even when everything else feels uncertain. I may never go back to where I came from, but I'm not looking back. I'm moving forward. With every step, he leads. With every tear, he comforts. With every question, he answers. Sometimes with words, sometimes with peace. If you're watching this and something inside you is stirring, don't ignore it. That's not just emotion, that's invitation. You're not here by accident. Maybe you've been hiding, just like I was. Maybe you've been searching in secret. Or maybe you've tried to forget the ache in your soul. But it's still there, isn't it? That ache is holy. That ache is his voice. Don't silence it. Don't scroll away. Lean in. Ask the question I once did. Jesus, if you're real, show me. I promise you, he will. You don't need to know the Bible. You don't need a perfect past. You don't need a script. Just your heart. That's where he meets you. That's where he met me. And he didn't come with judgment. He came with love. Not love you have to work for. Not love that expires. Eternal love. The kind that sees your worst and stays anyway. The kind that calls you by name when everyone else forgets. The kind that sits with you in the fire and leads you out whole. And now, I live for one reason. To make him known. To the forgotten. To the broken. To the seekers. If you've been wondering if there's more, there is. If you've been wondering if he sees you, he does. And if you've been waiting for a sign, maybe this is it. Not because I'm special, but because He is faithful. I was once afraid to speak. Now I speak so others know they are not alone. Jesus is real. He saved me, and He can save you too. All it takes is one whispered word. Yes. Maybe you're here right now sitting in the dark, whispering questions no one knows you're asking. Maybe you've done everything right on the outside, but inside, you're crumbling. I know that place. I've lived there, and I'm here to tell you, you're not alone. There's a love that waits for you not at the end of perfection, but in the middle of your pain. There's a Savior who doesn't demand that you climb up to Him. He comes down to you. He walks into your fire. He whispers your name in the silence. If my story has stirred something in you, don't push it away. Don't let fear steal what God might be trying to give you. This isn't just another video. This could be the moment that everything begins to change. If you've been searching for peace, for truth, for something real, His name is Jesus, and He's closer than you think. All it takes is one honest prayer, one whisper in the dark. Jesus, I want to know you. That's where it starts. That's where freedom begins. You don't need to have all the answers. You don't need to understand everything. What you need is a willing heart. Just come as you are. Bring your questions. Bring your fears. Bring your brokenness. He's not afraid of any of it. He welcomes all of it. He welcomed mine. He still does. Every day I wake up with scars on my body, but none in my soul. Because He healed the wounds no one else could see. He can do the same for you. So don't wait. Don't keep this search locked away in silence. Speak. Ask. Call out to Him. And when you do, I promise, He will answer. Maybe not with thunder, maybe not with fire, but with peace, with presence, with love so real, it will break every lie you've believed about who you are and what you're worth. You are not forgotten. You are not invisible. You are loved, fully, freely, eternally. If this message reached your heart, subscribe to this channel. Not just to follow content, but to take a step toward the truth. To follow Jesus. To walk in the light you were created for. Join a community that will walk with you, support you, pray for you. Share this video with someone else who's searching. You never know. Your share could be the spark that ignites someone's healing. Leave a comment below. Tell me your story. Ask your questions. This space isn't here to judge you. It's here to walk with you. I read every message. I pray over them. You are not just a viewer. You are a soul worth fighting for. Let's keep walking this road together. One step, one prayer, one yes at a time. Until next time, stay close. You are fully seen, deeply known, and eternally loved. And I'll be right here, waiting to hear your story. Because we're in this together. And I believe with all my heart, the best is still ahead.